It was raining hard in East Oakland that night. The kind of rain that makes the streets shine and the city feel quiet, too quiet. Down a narrow alley, a woman was crawling. Her white suit was soaked and torn, her ankle twisted, her voice barely holding on. She was the CEO of a company everyone in the city admired. But that night, she wasn't powerful. She was terrified. She kept whispering, "Please, don't hurt me. I can't walk." A pair of headlights turned the corner. Out of the glare stepped a man, tall, steady, carrying a small girl in a yellow raincoat. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. Just a single father, heading home after a long shift. When he heard that voice crying for help, he stopped. He set his daughter down by a doorway and told her, "Stay here." Then he walked toward the sound no one else was brave enough to follow. Ahead of him, a dark figure was closing in on the woman. Rain hit metal. The alley echoed with footsteps and fear. Then came one calm, commanding voice. "Step away from her." Now, everything froze. The shadow backed away. The woman stopped shaking. And the man, who had already lost more than most people could survive, lifted her into his arms and carried her through the rain. He didn't know her name. He didn't know that she was running from the very empire she helped build. And she didn't know that the man holding her had once saved lives for a living, until life took everything from him. That moment in the rain changed both of them. Because sometimes, the people who have the least power end up showing the most courage. And sometimes, one act of kindness can expose the truth that power tries hardest to hide. This isn't a story about a rescue. It's about what that rescue revealed. Inside a company, inside a city, and inside two people learning to stand again. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The questions began almost as soon as the rain stopped. Who was this woman? The one found crawling through an alley, clutching a laptop as if it were her last breath. Why had she, a CEO known for her polished speeches and million-dollar smile, been running barefoot through one of the roughest parts of East Oakland? And who was the man who stopped to help her? The single father who carried her out of the storm and into the safety of his small apartment. Why did he stop when so many others would have walked away? What did he know about loss that made him recognize it in a stranger's voice? And what secret was inside that laptop that someone was willing to chase her down for it in the middle of the night? Those answers didn't come all at once. They unfolded slowly, through phone records, deleted emails, missing transactions, and a trail of signatures that led far beyond a single company. Because this wasn't just about a woman in danger. It was about a system built on silence, and what happens when someone finally breaks it. On paper, they lived in two different worlds. She was the face of a company that built software to connect people. He was a man trying to keep the water running and the rent paid. But fate has a strange way of crossing paths that were never meant to meet. And in the next 24 hours, those paths would collide with something far bigger than either of them. An empire that ran on power, greed, and a secret that could not afford to be exposed. Within 24 hours, the cameras would arrive. Lawyers would circle. The media would turn the story of one woman's escape into headlines about money, betrayal, and scandal. But before all that, before the news vans and the flashing lights, it started somewhere much quieter. In a small apartment kitchen, with a dripping kettle, a handwritten note, and one simple decision that would matter more than any vote ever cast in a boardroom. What they didn't know yet was that everything, the rescue, the chase, the files, was only the beginning. Before that night in the alley, Naima Ellery's life was built around perfection. She was 34, first generation, the daughter of a high school teacher and a postal worker who believed in two things: education and endurance. By the time she was 30, she was sitting at the head of a company board, leading a multi-million-dollar tech firm that her father used to brag about to anyone who would listen. Every headline called her the next great voice in innovation. Every photo showed her smiling. But what no one ever saw was what came after the camera flashes. The quiet pressure to always agree, always obey, and never say no to the men who had helped her rise. And standing at her side through every deal, every gala, was the man she was supposed to marry, Julian Ward, the company's CFO. On paper, he was perfect, charming, handsome, eloquent. But those who worked close enough could see it in the way she flinched when he raised his voice, or how her laugh seemed practiced in meetings. That evening, she'd said no for the first time. Julian wanted her signature on a document, one that would give him control of her shares, control of her vote, control of everything she had built. She refused. The sound of thunder swallows his shout as she disappears into the hallway barefoot, down the stairwell, through the side exit, into the storm. Her phone slips from her fingers. A heel catches a broken grate. The sharp crack of pain. She goes down hard. For the first time in her career, Naima couldn't stand on her own. Just 3 blocks away, another kind of storm had been shaping a different life. Kalen Brooks, 31. Once a firefighter and paramedic, the kind who ran into burning homes when everyone else ran out. He'd carried bodies, bandaged wounds, and seen the last breath leave too many faces. But the fire that changed him wasn't the one at work. It was the one that took his wife, Maya, 2 years earlier. A framed photo on a cluttered shelf. A young black woman with a gentle smile and paint on her fingers, holding a newborn girl. Beside it, a firefighter's helmet gathering dust. Kalen's scar along his left arm catches the light as he bends over a broken washing machine in a cramped laundry room. Water drips. Tools clatter. His clothes smell faintly of detergent and oil. It's quiet work. Honest, humble, but it pays the rent and keeps food on the table. He'd made a promise after Maya's funeral, to stay soft where life had turned hard, to raise their daughter, Amira, in a home where kindness wasn't a weakness. The refrigerator plastered with drawings, rainbows, stick figures, hearts, a crooked sun. Amira, 6 years old, giggling in the next room, singing off-key to a cartoon theme. Every night, she colored their world back in. She believed crayons could fix anything. And in her own way, she was right. One evening, as thunder rolled outside, Amira pointed to the lightning through the window and asked, "Daddy, why are storms so loud?" He smiled, adjusting her blanket. "So we don't forget that light always comes with sound." He knew the sound of panic, and what it costs to ignore it. Fate is rarely loud. Sometimes it moves quietly, like footsteps through rain, or the muffled cry of someone you've never met. Naima drags herself across wet concrete, each movement slower than the last. Her breath catches. Her white sleeve is torn, dirt smeared across her palm. The laptop still against her chest. The sound of tires hissing in the distance. She looks back, no one visible, but she knows he's coming. He hears it first, a sound beneath the rain. A cry, faint, but unmistakable. A woman's voice, begging. He freezes, listening. His pulse changes rhythm. That voice doesn't belong here. Not in this alley, not at this hour. He crouches, setting Amira down beside a doorway. She blinks up at him. "Daddy." He touches her shoulder gently. "Stay here. Don't move." She nods, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Naima tries to pull herself upright, wincing, one hand reaching toward a wall for balance. A tall figure steps from the shadows, a man's outline, hood up, face hidden. He takes one slow step toward her, then another. Kalen steps into the light. Rain runs down his face. His voice cuts through the night. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. He just spoke quietly. "You're safe now." Naima's breathing began to slow. Her eyes darted around the small room. The cracked walls, the drawings taped everywhere, the faint smell of soap and something baking. This wasn't the world she knew. There were no marble floors, no polished glass, no noise of staff or security. Just warmth. But inside her, the panic hadn't left. He made it about loyalty. Her hand trembles as she scrolls. She knows what this means. If the files leak, the empire falls, and everyone who profited from it will come for her. Kalen steps closer, sensing the unease in the room. He glances at the laptop, then at her face. "You should rest," he says gently. "Keep the ankle elevated. I'll handle the door." Naima looks up, meeting his eyes for the first time since the night before. Something about his tone, steady, calm, makes her believe him. He didn't ask what she was hiding. He didn't need to. He had seen fear before, in burning houses, in wrecked cars, in people clinging to their last hope. And he knew it never looked the same twice. The strange thing about safety is that it doesn't always arrive when you earn it. Sometimes, it finds you when you have nothing left to give. Evening again. The apartment glows softly under warm light. Amira sits at the table drawing, crayons scattered across the wood. Naima sips the last of her tea. Kalen rinses dishes in the sink. For the first time in years, the room feels like peace. Then a sound. Low, mechanical. Tires stopping outside. Kalen freezes. Through the thin curtains, he sees the shine of black paint under a streetlight. A large SUV. Windows tinted. Engine running. It didn't take long. Powerful men never let their problems rest overnight. Inside the apartment, Naima's pulse quickens. Her fingers tighten around the mug. She knows that sound, the rhythm of control coming back to collect what it owns. There's a knock. Firm. Polite. Not a threat, at least not yet. Kalen looks at her, waiting for a sign. Naima shakes her head, mouthing, "Don't open it." But the knocking continues. Then a voice, calm, practiced, rehearsed for cameras. "Ms. Ellery, we'd like a word. We can make this right." They called it an offer. But offers from men like Julian Ward rarely came without a leash. She opens it again, staring at the evidence that could end everything she built. Kalen whispers, "They're leaving papers. What do you want me to do?" Naima's voice is barely a breath. "Nothing. Not yet." Inside that envelope was a promise. Money, reinstatement, public forgiveness. A clean slate. All she had to do was sign and hand over the laptop. The camera lingers as Naima stares at it. For a moment, it seems she might reach for it. Her hand hovers. Then she pushes it back with her foot. She'd spent years saying yes, to bosses, to boardrooms, to the idea that silence was strength. But in this small apartment, surrounded by crayons, mismatched dishes, and the smell of ginger tea, she said no. Outside, the reporters left with their empty footage. Inside, something stronger than fear took its first breath. If you're still with us, drop "amazing" in the comments and tell us which city you're watching from. Let's see who's really following this story. She thought she'd bought herself time, but the truth doesn't stay quiet for long. And by morning, the world would know that the woman who said no once was about to say it again. This time, for everyone to hear. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the city hadn't rested. News of a missing CEO was already moving through whispers, one that avoided names but hinted at scandal. In a cramped third-floor apartment, two strangers turned quiet into strategy. Naima Ellery, once the face of power, was now tracing the very lines she used to sign without question. And across from her sat a man who'd never seen the inside of a boardroom, but who knew patterns when he saw them. She called it our garden. 3 figures standing together. It was a small thing, a child's drawing, but it became their symbol. Because what they were trying to grow was fragile, and what they were fighting was rot. Everything connects back. It's like they built a maze to lose anyone who looked. Then let's start at the walls and work our way in. They worked for hours. No legal team, no safety net. Just two people piecing together what powerful men hoped would stay buried under jargon and paperwork. By midnight, they had their first picture. Money moved under the name of charity projects that never existed, and the person authorizing those transfers was the same man she once planned to marry. Julian Ward had turned love into leverage, and now he was using the same skills to make sure the world thought she was the thief. The first blow didn't come from lawyers. It came from the media. A single email sent to every major outlet, claiming to be from a company insider. One who said Naima had forged transfers and disappeared with evidence. It was clean, well-timed, and convincing. Reporters called it the anonymous whistleblower. But the truth was simpler. It was bait. Kaylin watches her expression tighten. You didn't sign those, right? Naima's voice cracks slightly. No, but the system logs say I did. Someone had rebuilt the trail to frame her, line by line, transaction by transaction. Every breadcrumb pointed to her, until one didn't. It was small, so small she almost missed it. A single payment, $500, routed to a vendor no one had ever questioned. It wasn't a logistics company. It was a P.O. box in a storage facility. And inside that tiny box was the key to everything. Julian Ward. Only this time, his name didn't appear on the public line. It appeared behind it, hidden under a second alias. A shadow account that had been quietly collecting from every false contract in the system. He called it synergy. But what it really was consolidation, turning an empire into his own. And Naima's refusal to sign had interrupted a plan he'd been building for 2 years. He hadn't chased her that night because of love or betrayal. He'd chased her because she was the only proof that his kingdom wasn't built on brilliance. It was built on fraud. The evidence was enough to burn everything down. But evidence alone doesn't speak. Someone had to stand and tell the story. Kaylin leans forward. You go back. You walk into that boardroom. You show them what he did. Naima stares at him, stunned. They'll bury me. They'll call it personal revenge. I'll lose everything. He nods slowly. Maybe. Or they'll hear you. She looks toward Amira's crayon drawing on the wall. 3 stick figures. The garden. Safe hands. The life she'd never known she could have. It wasn't just about clearing her name anymore. It was about telling the truth in a world where truth cost everything. She didn't walk well, but she walked anyway. Not for survival, for closure. She was heading back into the building she once owned. And this time, she wasn't coming for a title. She was coming for the truth. The marble floors of Morrison Tower hadn't changed. Neither had the glass walls or the rows of polished chairs that looked out over the skyline. But the woman walking through those doors wasn't the same one who'd built this place. Power recognizes posture. Today, it met conviction. She doesn't waste words, doesn't greet them. She opens the folder and lays it down. The evidence was simple. It didn't need a speech. Numbers tell the truth when people don't. You said I disappeared. You said I ran. But the only thing I ran from was a lie with my name on it. Naima said. The room stills. Julian Ward, at the head of the table, leans back with a smirk. Is this performance or confession? He says. But his voice cracks on the last word. She turns toward him slowly, her tone quiet but sharp. Neither. It's proof. For years, she'd let men like him define what truth sounded like. Now, she was showing them what it looked like. The large monitor behind her splits into 2 columns. On one side, the supposed whistleblower emails that framed her. On the other, the metadata. The whistleblower who accused her had never been an outsider. It wasn't a hacker. It wasn't a rival. It was someone inside, someone trained to hide truth behind procedure. An anonymous, distorted voice spoke. I was instructed to draft alternate copies. The directive came from above. Damage control before exposure. We were told to make it look clean. The truth didn't just come from her mouth. It came from their own paper trail. He slams his palm against the table. This doesn't prove intent. Naima looks at him, unflinching. No, she says. It proves fear. And in that moment, every mask in the room began to crack. They had called her emotional, unstable, reckless. But now, every document pointed to one truth. She wasn't the liability. She was the scapegoat they built to protect a man who believed he was untouchable. What they hadn't realized yet was that the woman they thought they'd cornered had already found her way out. They expected her to beg for her title back. Instead, she gave them something none of them saw coming. A letter of resignation. This is my formal resignation. Effective immediately. I'm giving up my shares, my title, and every illusion that I owe this company anything. Naima said firmly and clearly. The room falls silent. One executive lets out a stunned laugh. Another whispers, she's throwing it all away. But her mentor's eyes fill with tears. Naima glances around the table, meeting every gaze. You can keep your seats, your bonuses, your empire built on silence. I've carried your secrets long enough. Now, I'm setting them down. She traded a crown for clean hands. Julian leans forward, voice dripping with disdain. You'll regret this, Naima. You're destroying yourself. She meets his stare, calm and almost kind. No, she says. I'm just done letting you decide who I am. There are moments when walking away feels like defeat. But sometimes, it's the only way to win with your soul intact. Naima gathers her laptop, her folder, and a single piece of paper, Amira's drawing, from the corner of her bag. She pauses by the door, the city skyline behind her. Her limp echoes down the corridor as the boardroom sits frozen in its own silence. Resignation wasn't retreat. It was leverage. Because while they thought she was stepping down, she was, in truth, stepping out. And taking the entire story with her. In 48 hours, the empire that silenced her would start to crumble. But before that happened, something unexpected would bloom. A kind of peace no title could buy. By sunrise, the storm that drenched Oakland had passed. But a different kind of storm was only beginning. The same media that once called her missing now called her courageous. The resignation that was meant to end her career had opened something bigger, an inquiry led not by loyalty, but by law. Sometimes the only way to fix a house is to step outside and point to the cracks. And sometimes that single act, walking away, makes everyone else look down and realize the floor was never stable to begin with. Late afternoon sunlight pours through the open balcony door of Kalen's apartment. The storm clouds are gone. A gentle breeze moves the curtain. Kalen kneels beside a pot of soil, guiding Amira's tiny hands as she presses a marigold stem into place. Naima sits nearby, her ankle still wrapped, watching quietly. Healing doesn't announce itself. It shows up in the smallest acts, in soil under your nails, in laughter that returns without asking permission. It's still standing. Yeah, some things just need patience. Kalen said, a garden grows best in hands that once trembled. Amira looks up, her face glowing. From her wrist, she removes a bracelet, thread woven with uneven strands of color. It's commitment, she says proudly. Not a ring yet. Amira said. Naima laughs through a tear, slipping it onto her wrist. It's perfect. In that moment, power looked nothing like glass towers or headlines. It looked like three people planting something fragile and choosing to let it grow. Out of what was broken, she built something whole. She called it the Amira House, a place for women caught between power and survival. A space to rebuild, retrain, and rise again. It wasn't charity. It was justice done quietly, person by person. Because safety shouldn't be a perk. It should be a place. People used to tell me success meant climbing higher. I think it means reaching back. Naima said. The email came from a name she didn't recognize at first. A junior accountant she'd met years ago, fired quietly, then rehired under Julian's watch. Attached was a file, a ledger no one was supposed to find. She clicks. The screen fills with entries. Every transaction, every kickback, every off-book fund she had traced weeks earlier. Now verified, line by line, from inside the company's own server. When one person stands, others find their feet. It's starting, Naima said gently. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it begins with a whisper, a file, a seed, or a child's drawing of a garden. And sometimes the most powerful act isn't winning, but choosing to stay human after everything tries to make you forget how. Was justice served? Or simply started? Would you have seen the red flags? What would you have done in Kalen's place? One act of courage didn't just rewrite an empire, it rebuilt lives. And it reminded the rest of us that the smallest decision to do what's right can still change everything. And that is where their story found its peace. Not in revenge, not in profit, but in something far rarer, understanding. Naima didn't rebuild an empire. She built a home. And Kalen didn't save a stranger that night. He helped her remember what being seen really feels like. And maybe that's the part of the story that matters most. What do you think really happened behind those closed doors? Was it strategy or courage? What do you think really happened behind those closed doors, strategy or courage? Tell us below. I'm reading every single one. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that power doesn't always look like titles, you'll want to see what came next. Because if you thought this was measured power, wait till you see how a fake charity took over an entire police precinct from the inside. Or maybe start with the case where a missing key reappeared 10 years later. Both stories prove the same thing. Truth has a way of finding the light. Subscribe for more true life twists. And if you know someone who still believes kindness can change outcomes, share the story with them. Because sometimes that's how change begins. Not in noise, but in compassion that refuses to give up. If you want more stories like this, check out the video on screen next. And tell me, what's your take on this? Comment below. I'm reading every single one. If this story helped, hit like and send it to someone who needs a little faith in humanity tonight.